BlankLight can be accessed through the Alt-V menu, so if we press Alt-V, we notice that there's an option for BlankLight. However, I typically press Alt-V, then B to jump into BlankLight, and then once you jump into BlankLight, you can begin rolling your wheel in order to scroll through various lighting setups for your scene. New to this version, you'll have the ability to press tab and there will be a .UI where you can actually go in and just roll over the dice in order to get various different lighting setups, but you're also able to save presets and load them inside of this new setup, and there's also buttons with tooltips to allow you to adjust various aspects of lights. So in the event that you want to just pause your setup and just go in and actually roll things generally, and also go in and toggle lights individually, in the event that you're trying to build things up, you could still do that without the expanded view, just showing how now that's possible inside the new .UI as part of BlankLight. So Solidify also has support for the .UI, so I'll tab in edit mode and select this one point, press X and delete it in order to set up this example. If we press Q and we go under add modifier, we can add a Solidify, and from here we see things get a little bit skewed. We can press tab and that will now pause the modal, allowing us to freely rotate and things like that, but it also opens the .UI. From here we see that there's an offset value where we can roll the wheel in order to adjust the offset values. There's also a toggle where by scrolling over it we can choose to use rim or only not rim, but also we can go in and adjust the offset and thickness on the fly. Of course, same rules apply where basically alt scrolling over a parameter will double that parameter exponentially, and scrolling backwards will halve it. But one of my favorite options to talk about is if we notice how the rim is just getting out of control, we can roll over the Solidify mode and jump between extrude and non-manifold, which is one of my favorite aspects about this new UI. So now we can actually give it any amount of thickness and the result will be at least more adequate than this. So just letting you know that Solidify now has the .UI in case you need to go in and type very specific parameters like 1.52. And notice now that also the UI flashes faster whenever it's waiting for text entry. So let's set this to something like 1.3. Let's set it to 0.3, and let's set the offset to something like 2, and we can just click to close it, and that is basically how you can get in and out of .UI as part of Solidify. You ever wished your cube was a plane? Sometimes I just use bisect mirror to do that. So we'll press Alt X to bring up mirror, and we'll scroll the wheel until we jump to bisect, and while holding shift I'm just going to click on the Z and then click on the opposite Z, and then I'm going to click on the X, which basically deleted everything and has now reduced us basically to a plane. From here I can press tab or press Q and go into our Q menu, and under add modifier we can click on screw to add a screw modifier. If we look over to the side, we see that there's now a dot, which means that we can expand it to go into the .UI. From here you can roll over segments in order to adjust how many segments, but also you're able to go in here and choose to flip your normals and also shift click in order to shade smooth, depending on if you have smooth shading enabled on your object. Another thing is that you can just click on this in order to flip your normals, but you can also shift click it in order to turn off the ability to calculate the normals. So sometimes you don't need it, sometimes you do. Another thing to also keep in mind is that if we click on this one for face orientation, this one will actually turn off the face orientation, so if it drives you crazy. But seeing that this is all red, that means that we should go over, click on the normals button, and then from there we can actually turn this off. Another thing too is that if you need to change your angle to 0, you can just click on angle, just type in 0, and now it's set to 0, but we actually want this to be 360 because this is an example similar to our typical cylinoid. We click to apply and we're done. So from here I can just tab into edit mode, select divert, control click mark in order to begin rolling this as far as being a bevel. Tab into object mode, select everything and control click bevel in order to add a new bevel. Press D inside of Boxcutter to jump over a circle, and we'll just cut a circle in the middle, and just like that we're on our way to creating a cylinoid, basically using a new screw system inside of HardOps. A .UI really is just a interface change with the way that you'll interact with your options, but I'll be showing a little bit more about how I use these modifiers as we get on with these examples. So extending on our previous example, we'll look at this from top view, go into orthographic, press D, switch over to box, and before even performing this operation, I'm going to select this and shift click Smart Apply in order to Smart Apply a duplicate, and on this duplicate we'll just perform our cut, but we'll press B in order to bevel it. We'll press X in order to change the slice, we'll press X again to change the intersect, and then we'll press spacebar in order to apply. And with this piece, we can now press Q, go under Add Modifier, and choose Displace. With Displace, one of my favorite things is actually rolling the wheel backwards, where instead of going forward through the axes, I can jump backwards and jump straight to normal, where I can push this out on its normal, giving me an interesting result. Notice that inside of Display, there's a dot over on the left side, meaning that if we press Tab, we can actually jump into the DotUI. So from here, I can actually shift scroll over to strength to adjust it gradually. I can roll over the axis to choose particularly what displace option I want, whether I want a particular axis like X, Y, or Z, or if I want to use it on normal like I'm using in this particular case. So sometimes I'll use a smart apply duplicate with an intersect in order to bow it out like so, and then clicking to apply, I'm able to basically add a weld to it, and we'll just weld it to get it to look better, and then add a bevel on top, set our shading to something small by pressing 1 to set our auto smooth to 90, and then using array, we can just quickly add an array to move this down. And you might be wondering what this piece is. Let's actually resolve that. So what I'll have to do is apply to Boolean, and then tab into edit mode and locate this piece and delete it. And from there, we no longer have that piece. In fact, it's also present on the piece that we spun. And the only way to resolve that is just going into edit mode and deleting that particular edge, which will sometimes recalculate the normals to be in a different direction. But it'll definitely get rid of that pesky edge in the center. But I'm so used to it not showing up in render that it just doesn't bother me.